let's say in Pakistan, some Islamically minded people just take over. Some military generals that are very religious or whatever say, you know what, we're having an Islamic takeover of the country, we're going to implement Sharia law, this is going to happen. And now everybody's like, Takbir, right? And we're really happy because now we got a land that's completely Islamic now and under Islamic law, and all of the haram things have been removed, and the bars are getting shut down, the clubs are getting shut down, and like all the riba is being removed, all this stuff's happening, right? Overnight. Was that the objective of Islam? If that was, then you are imposing the law of Islam on a majority of people who are actually not interested in that law, nor do they want to follow it. So you're ensuring that people are following it for intentions other than the pleasure of Allah, which means you're creating an entire culture of hypocrisy, a gigantic culture of nifaq. The only reason they're, and by the way, for example, in Iran, you have the Shahs and you have their version of Sharia law, right? The Shia nation, but they have Sharia law implementation. How many revolts are happening against that and protests happening against that, right? From their own population. Why? If the objective of Islam was to get a government and to issue policies to make selling pork haram and selling alcohol haram, and if that's what you think the objective of Islam was, that's one view. But if you study the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, the first objective is to actually generate the people that you don't have to govern for them to obey Allah. You don't have to have a government coming and telling them they have to fast for them to fast, or a government coming and telling them they cannot drink alcohol for them to give up alcohol. The most amazing transformation that happened, the revolution that happened in the Quran, in the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, even the establishment of the Khilafah eventually, the Khilafah was brought about at the hands of people who were actually completely in Allah's obedience already themselves. They were the masses of them were already in obedience to Allah themselves. And naturally then, they're going to establish an order that is in line with their own worldview. They're already loyal to Allah's book and His messenger. And they're going to, if you enforce this on people, doesn't that become a form of la ikraha fid din? There's no compulsion in religion. I remember when I was younger, I was in Saudi, and back then they don't have that anymore. They had the mutawwa'. So in Riyadh, where I used to live in my childhood, if I'm outside, it's Asr time and the adhan goes off, you better not be found on the street. They had these police authorized mashayikh, they're called mutawwa'. They had a long stick in their hand, and if they see you, they bop you on the head. And if you don't run to the masjid, then they'll call the cops on you. And the stores had to be shut down during the salah, because if the stores are open, the storekeeper will be dragged. And we had a lot of Bangladeshi Muslims and Indian Muslims and Pakistani Muslims and Sri Lankan Muslims, but we also had Sri Lankan Hindus and Sri Lankan Christians, and some of those guys got dragged into the masjid because they don't speak Arabic. And they just know, because they hear everybody say Assalamu alaikum, they're like Assalamu alaikum, Salah, 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 no Salah, there's no Salah. And he got beat into, it's like his first Salah, he's like, Allahu Akbar, But even the Muslims who got beat into going to the Salah, you believe that was the objective of Islam? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he would pray Fajr and some Sahaba wouldn't show up, right? There's some strong hadith, right? But none of them say drag them over here and make them pray. Not one of them. None of them. You have even later on in the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, he found somebody drinking in his house, drinking alcohol. He used to walk the streets, right? So he saw somebody, window was open, he could see inside, he's getting drunk. So he barged in, he said, you're doing haram. He said, I did one haram, you did 3 haram. First of all, you looked inside my house. I have a right to have privacy. You walked in without permission, and you made assumption. How do you know it's alcohol? Umar bin al-Khattab let him go. Walked away. A couple of days later, Umar is giving khutbah. Who's in the audience? Same guy. And he called him afterwards, and he said, I never told anyone about you. And he said, I stopped drinking after that day. The goal of the objective of the Quran, the victory is to produce people that will obey Allah even when every one of their feelings is saying disobey Allah's messenger. Isn't that what happened in Hudaybiyah? Isn't that the ultimate fath? Do you think if our children don't want to pray and we take them into a Muslim country that forces them to pray, our children don't want to wear hijab, our children don't want to recite the Quran, our children are not interested in the deen, our children want to go to concerts and they want to go to, they want to go gamble, they want to drink alcohol, and you're not letting them because it's haram, and now they become adults and they want to do all those things, but you put them in a Muslim country so they can't. You think that will make them believers? You think that will make them successful in the eyes of Allah? You think on Judgment Day, Ya Allah, they were in a Muslim country, they couldn't do it. Is Allah judging what you couldn't do, or is Allah judging the hearts? The ultimate victory of Islam is to make a human being successful in front of Allah on Judgment Day. If that goal is not established, if that is not your goal, and your goal is superficially imposing Islamic rules that you think is Islam itself, then you failed. That's actually, so what if 1 million people are being forced to pray and forced to eat halal and none of them want to, or the majority of them don't want to, or the moment they have freedom, they'll do something else? You had, these are ugly realities, but you need to know these things. The country I shall not name, Islamic. No alcohol, no gambling, no this, no that. And a neighboring country, alcohol's okay. Even though Muslim country, alcohol's okay, prostitution is okay, clubbing is okay, everything's okay. Just a border between them. And it's an open border. Friday night, there's a massive traffic jam from the Islamic country into the party country. All weekend, and a massive hijrah back. They make umrah every weekend. And these are both Muslim countries. These are both Muslims, and there's adhan in both countries. There's salah in both countries. But what is this reality? The reality is Islam is not being brought to the people. When we're discussing Islam in the Muslim lands, we're discussing Sharia courts. We're discussing policies. We're discussing, should we kill the murtad or not? Or should we ban alcohol or not? Whether you ban alcohol or not, the people who want to drink alcohol, you haven't addressed why do they want it. Why were the Sahaba pouring out the alcohol that they were getting drunk on for years, and one ayah comes down, no police, no prohibition laws, no penalties, no nothing, and the streets of Medina are flooding with alcohol? Why? Because that was the ultimate victory of the Prophet ﷺ. He produced people like that. It's people. It's not government, it's not policy, it's not control, it's not land, it's not resources. We don't have the media, we don't have the power, we don't have the resources, we don't have the money. What resources did Rasul ﷺ have? What resources did he have? And finally we're about to get millions, right? Finally. And how is Allah describing these millions? Secondary. Lands, أخرى لم تقدروها عليها قد أحاط الله بها. What has become in our minds? Until the Muslims have the resources, until we have the money, until we have the power, until we have the government, until we have the Sharia courts, until then Islam will not be victorious. Really? In other words, we think Islam will come top down. Islam has always come how? Bottom up. Bottom up. Even bringing Islam into a society can only come bottom up. And if you try to bring it top down, if one group of Muslims says we're going to bring it top down, what's going to happen? Just like you forced it on society, it's like forcing somebody to eat something they don't want to eat. What's going to happen? They're going to throw it up. They're going to just, it's going to come out. And this is what we have to contend with. To me, the biggest battle is not we have to make our countries Islamic. The biggest challenge to me is we have to make our youth inspired by the Quran. That's it. Because if we can make our youth inspired by the Quran, then those youth will one day become fathers. And within 20 years, we're going to have an entire generation of Muslims that will naturally bring about an Islamic society. because they're attached to this religion as part of their psyche. They're consciously Muslim. They're not civilizational Muslims. They're not Muslim because their dad was Muslim or mom was Muslim. They're Muslim because they love this religion. They're convinced of it. They're convinced of its values. They can convince their non-Muslim friend of its values. They're that convinced of it, that people are nervous to be around them because when they're around them, they might become Muslim too. When you start producing youth like that, then you see a change in the world. That's when you see a change in the world. It's actually, this human resource is actually the resource.